Mason's stomach growled again, louder this time. He pressed his hand against it and kept walking, head low, boots scraping over the cold metal street of Zarni's 5. His human clothes were torn at the cuffs, his jacket too thin for the night wind that carried dust and the scent of oil. Aliens walked past him, tall ones with glowing eyes, short ones with shells on their backs. None of them even looked his way. To them, he was just another human drifter, a nobody. He had no money, no job, and nowhere to sleep tonight. 3 days ago, he had landed on this planet by accident. The cargo ship he hitched a ride on had kicked him off when they found out he couldn't pay. Now all he had was a small pack with one empty water flask and a broken cum. His legs were tired, but he couldn't stop. If he stopped, he might freeze. And Mason had no intention of dying on an alien sidewalk. He turned a corner and found a quieter street. Most of the buildings here were older, some looked half abandoned. Neon signs flickered in unreadable alien language. But one small door caught his eye. It was made of dark wood, which was rare here, and had strange symbols carved into it. There was no sign, no light. Nothing special, just a door. But something about it made him pause. Maybe it was the way. It stood there, slightly open, like it had been waiting for him. He stepped closer, unsure why. As he raised his hand to knock, the door creaked open wider. Slow and quiet. Mason froze. Inside was darkness, and the faint smell of cooked food. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. "Hello?" he said, his voice weak, rough from the dry air. No answer. But then, from the shadows came movement. A figure stepped into view, tall, elegant, with pale purple skin and long white hair. Her eyes were large, silver, and sharp, but not unkind. She looked at him for a moment, studying his face. "You are human," she said softly, her voice smooth like water. Mason nodded. "Yeah, I'm just passing by." "You look cold," she said, "and hungry." He didn't respond, didn't have to. She stepped aside and opened the door wider. "You may come in," she said. Mason blinked, unsure if he heard her right. This planet wasn't friendly to humans. They weren't exactly hated, but no one helped them, especially not single alien women opening their homes. Still, warmth and food were hard to refuse. "Why?" he asked, his voice full of doubt. She tilted her head. "Because I am curious." He hesitated only a second longer before stepping inside. The air inside was warm, filled with the scent of spices he didn't know but liked instantly. The room was simple, clean floors, soft lighting, and a strange kind of calm. She closed the door behind him and walked past him silently. "I am Zerine," she said. "I own this place, Mason," he replied. "Thanks for letting me in." Zerine nodded and pointed to a small table. "Sit," she said. "You need food." He sat without argument. She brought a bowl of thick, steaming stew and set it before him. Mason didn't wait. He started eating, fast but not wild. Zerine sat across from him, watching without speaking. When he finished, she asked, "Where do you sleep?" "Nowhere," he said, wiping his mouth with his sleeve. "Do you have money?" He shook his head, embarrassed. "No." Zerine was quiet for a long moment, then said something strange. "You may stay," she said. "No rent, for now." Mason looked up, confused. "Why are you helping me?" he asked again. Zerine's eyes narrowed just slightly. "I once knew a human," she said. "Long ago." He waited for her to continue, but she stood and walked toward the hallway. "There are rules if you stay," she said without turning around. "Do not enter the third room. Do not ask about my husband, and always be home by sunset." Mason blinked. "What's in the third room?" he asked. Zerine paused at the end of the hall, then said, "Something that remembers." She disappeared into the darkness. Mason sat alone, unsure what kind of home he had just walked into. But for now, he had warmth, food, and a roof over his head. Outside, the night grew colder, but Mason's heart felt something even stranger, like he had just stepped into a story he didn't understand yet. Then, from deep inside the house, he heard something move slow, heavy. Breathing. He turned his head toward the hallway. The third door was still closed, but something behind it had just taken a step. Mason didn't sleep well that night. The bed Zerine gave him was soft, the blanket warm, but the sound from behind the third door kept echoing in his head. A slow thud, then silence, then another sound like something shifting its weight. He told himself it was a heating system, or maybe an old machine, but he didn't believe it. That door wasn't locked by mistake. It had thick chains, and the keyhole looked like it hadn't been used in years. In the morning, he woke up early and walked to the kitchen. Zerine was already there, preparing something that smelled sweet and sharp. She didn't say much, just nodded at him and placed a strange fruit on the table. It was blue, soft, and warm in his hands. He ate it slowly while watching her move, her white hair tied back with a silver band. Her skin caught the light like crystal, but there was something heavy in the way she moved. After breakfast, she handed him a small list written in messy human letters. "Chores," she said. "If you stay here, you must help." Mason didn't mind. He swept the floors, cleaned the windows, and helped fix a broken pipe in the back room. There was no one else in the building, no other tenants, no sound except the wind outside and Zerine's soft footsteps. By the second day, Mason noticed something odd. Zerine always avoided the third room. Even when she passed by it, she looked at it like it was watching her, not the other way around. He asked once, just to see her reaction, "Your husband, is he still alive?" Zerine didn't answer. She just walked away. That night, the sound behind the third door came again, longer this time. And Mason could have sworn he heard breathing, slow and heavy like a sleeping beast. On the third day, he finished his chores early, and curiosity began to eat at him. Zerine had gone out, saying she needed to buy supplies. As soon as she left, Mason stood in front of the third door, heart pounding. He didn't have the key, but the lock was old, and the chains looked loose. He told himself he wouldn't go in, just peek, just a quick look. He touched the handle, and to his surprise, it moved. The door creaked open an inch, then two. Inside, the room was pitch black. No lights, no windows. The air smelled like dust and something else like old metal and dried flowers. He leaned in, trying to see. Suddenly, something moved in the darkness, a whisper of air, a shift of weight. Then the door slammed shut. Pushing him back, he stumbled and fell, heart racing. As he lay there, catching his breath, he heard the sound again, something pressing softly against the door from the inside. Then silence. When Zerine returned, she didn't say anything, but her eyes were sharp, like she knew. At dinner, she didn't speak, just stared at her plate. Mason felt the silence wrap around them like a net. After the meal, she stood up and said something that sent chills down his spine. "You touched the door." He didn't answer, but she already knew. "There are things in this house that remember," she said quietly. "And not all memories are kind." Mason wanted to apologize, but his voice didn't come out. Zerine turned and walked away again, leaving him alone at the table. That night, the wind outside was stronger. The walls creaked, and something knocked gently from the other side of the third door. He couldn't sleep. He kept wondering who or what was locked in that room, and why Zerine, who seemed kind and lonely, would keep something hidden like that. On the fourth morning, Zerine's mood changed. She was softer, her voice warmer, as if nothing had happened. But when Mason looked at her hands, he saw a fresh bandage on her wrist. He asked what happened, and she smiled without emotion. "Sometimes the past bites," she said. Mason didn't know what she meant, but in the silence that followed, he understood something clearly. Zerine wasn't just a lonely landlady with a strange rule. She was hiding pain, hiding secrets, and that third door wasn't just locked with chains. It was locked with memories. Memories that were now starting to notice Mason. The next night, just before sleep took him, Mason heard a voice whisper through the cracks in the wall. It said one word in perfect English, slow and soft like breath: "Mason." Mason didn't tell Zerine about the voice. He wanted to, but the name had been too perfect. Too clear. No alien would pronounce his name like that. It had sounded human, too human. The next day, everything felt different. Zareen was polite, almost cheerful, as if the house hadn't whispered through the walls the night before. But Mason was quiet. He couldn't stop thinking about that voice. He needed answers. But he also didn't want to break her trust more than he already had. By noon, he was alone again. Zareen had gone out to get special herbs from the upper market. Mason stared at the hallway for a long time. The third door seemed calm now, still locked, but not forgotten. He felt drawn to it. But instead of touching it again, he walked past it and went to the basement. He hadn't explored it before. Zareen never mentioned it, and he never thought to ask. The stairs were dusty and steep, the lights dim and flickering at the bottom. The air was thick and cold. Rows of old crates lined the walls, covered in dust, cobwebs clinging like shadows. He opened one, expecting tools or junk. Instead, he found a human boot. Old, worn out, but clearly human-made. His heart skipped. He opened another crate close. A broken human communicator, a book with Earth symbols on the cover. Mason froze when he saw the photo. It was faded, but he knew that face. His older brother, Eli, smiling, wearing the same jacket he wore when he left Earth for his last mission. Eli had disappeared 5 years ago, declared lost in space after his ship vanished in a jump failure. But here he was, in a photo, in Zareen's basement. Mason sat down hard on the floor, the photo shaking in his hands. He tried to breathe, but questions flooded his mind. What was his brother doing here? Did Zareen know? Was Eli the human she mentioned? Was he the husband she said not to ask about? He took the photo upstairs and waited. When Zareen returned, her smile faded the moment she saw the picture in his hand. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she sat down slowly, like her legs could no longer hold her. "You weren't supposed to know," she said quietly. "So it's true," Mason said, voice rough. "He was here." Zareen nodded, her silver eyes full of sadness. "He came to Zarnis 5 by accident," she said. "Just like you. He was kind like you, hungry like you, and curious." Mason leaned forward. "What happened to him?" She looked away. "I loved him," she said. "But love between species is forbidden under Zarni's law." She stood, walked to the window, and whispered. "They came for him one night, the authorities. They took him." Mason felt his hands shake. "Why didn't you stop them?" he asked. Zareen turned, eyes glowing slightly in the dim light. "Because I had no power," she said. "I begged, I fought. But they said humans bring infection of the mind. They said I betrayed my blood." Mason wanted to believe her, but a part of him still burned. "He trusted you." He said. "I know," she whispered. "And I failed him." They stood in silence, the room heavy with memories. Then Mason asked, "What's in the third room?" Zareen's eyes narrowed. "It's not your brother," she said, "but it's something connected to him." That night, Mason didn't sleep. He sat in the hallway, facing the third door. He watched the shadows, listened for whispers. At midnight, the door moved, just slightly. Then a sound came, not words, not breathing, but metal scraping, slow and rhythmic, like something dragging its hand across the floor. He leaned closer. "Mason," the voice came again. But this time, it wasn't soft. It was urgent, desperate. He jumped to his feet, heart racing. The voice came again, louder. "Help me." Mason reached for the door. Just then, Zareen appeared behind him. Her voice was cold this time. "Not kind. I told you not to touch it again." He turned slowly. "I think my brother's in there," he said. Zareen's expression didn't change. "That room remembers pain," she said. "If you open it, you won't be able to forget." Mason stepped back. He didn't know what scared him more, the door behind him or the truth in her eyes. But he was sure of one thing now, whatever was in that room. It knew his name, and it wasn't going to stop calling. Mason didn't try to open the third door the next day, but that didn't stop it from calling to him. Every time he walked past it, his skin tingled. The air near it felt heavier now, like it was holding a secret too long. He couldn't stop thinking about his brother. The photo, the voice, the scraping sound, none of it made sense. And Zareen's words stayed in his head like sharp echoes. That room remembers pain. That morning. Zareen left earlier than usual. She didn't say where she was going. She just looked at him and said, "Don't go near the door." Then she was gone. And the silence returned. Mason didn't go to the door. He went back to the basement. Something told him the answers were hidden there, not behind chains. He brought a small light this time and searched every crate. Under a broken cabinet, he found a hidden panel in the wall. It looked like an old maintenance hatch, but smaller. When he opened it, he found something wrapped in cloth, old earth. Cloth. Inside was a datapad, human-made, covered in dust. He powered it on, and the screen flickered to life. A human face appeared, his brother Eli. It was a message. Recorded years ago. Eli looked tired, beard grown, eyes darker. "If you're seeing this," Eli said, "then I failed to get out." Mason froze, breath stuck in his throat. "I stayed with her," Eli continued. "I trusted her. She said she would protect me, hide me from the alien law. But one night, she changed." The screen glitched, but the voice continued. "She said something took root in the third room. I never saw it, but I heard it. She told me not to listen. But I did. It sounded like me, and when I got close, the message ended in static. No goodbye, no warning, just silence." Mason sat on the cold floor, staring at the dark screen. His brother had been afraid, and Zareen had been hiding something much darker than he thought. When Zareen returned, Mason didn't speak. He watched her carefully, every move, every blink. She smiled, cooked dinner, acted like everything was fine. But something about her had changed. Her smile was too calm, her eyes too cold. That night, Mason waited until she fell asleep. Then he went back to the third door. He didn't try to open it, not yet. He just sat beside it, his back to the wall. The house was silent. Then the voice came again, but this time, it wasn't calling his name. It was humming, a tune, soft and broken, his mother's lullaby. No alien would know that, only Eli. Mason pressed his forehead to the door, eyes shut. "I'm here," he whispered. The humming stopped then. A whisper, not from behind the door, but from down the hall. "You shouldn't be there." He turned, and Zareen was standing at the end of the corridor. She didn't look angry, just tired. Mason stood slowly. "Tell me the truth," he said. Zareen didn't answer. Instead, she walked to a nearby wall and pressed her hand against a panel. It slid open, revealing stairs leading down deeper than the basement. "I'll show you," she said. They walked in silence. The stairs creaked, and the walls were lined with strange symbols, glowing faintly. At the bottom was a wide room filled with wires, lights, and floating orbs, technology Mason didn't recognize. In the center was a glass tank, filled with mist. Something floated inside, half seen, not fully formed. "It's not your brother," Zareen said. "But it wears his voice." Mason stared at her. "What is it?" She looked at the tank, eyes full of regret. "A shadow," she whispered. "A mimic." It copied his thoughts, his voice, even his memories. It was born from the room where he used to sleep. After he disappeared, it grew. Mason stepped closer. The thing in the tank shifted, and for a second, he saw Eli's face smiling. Then it melted into smoke again. "You kept this?" he asked, voice shaking. "To study it," Zareen said. "To understand why it was born from him. To see if there was a way to bring him back." Mason backed away. "You lied. I protected you," she said. "The moment you came." It woke up again. "You're connected to it. Maybe it thinks you're him." He didn't know what to believe anymore. The tank pulsed softly, and a soft knock came from the third door above. Not loud, not fast, just steady, patient, like someone waiting. Mason looked at Zareen, and she whispered, "If you open that door, it won't let go." Mason didn't go near the third door after that. He slept with one eye open. Knowing something above the basement tank was watching him, the knock hadn't returned, but that only made the silence worse. It felt like something was waiting for him to break. He tried to act normal, helping Zareen with repairs, cooking, and cleaning. But inside, his thoughts were sharp and wild. The thing in the tank wasn't just mimicking his brother. It was growing stronger. Every day, the lights near it pulsed faster. Zareen said it was reacting to Mason's presence. Maybe it thought he was Eli, or maybe it knew he was Eli's blood. Either way, it was waking up. Then came the knock at the front door. Not the third door this time, the real one. Zareen opened it, and two tall aliens in dark armor stepped inside. Mason froze, standing in the kitchen doorway. The taller one scanned the room with cold yellow eyes. "We are here for the human," he said. Zareen blocked their path. "He is under my care," she said, calm but firm. The second alien stepped forward. "Interspecies housing is still illegal." "Zareen," he said, "you know the law. He is not registered." Mason didn't move. He knew running was useless. Zareen didn't argue. She said nothing, just stood still. The officers looked at Mason and nodded. "He comes with us." Zareen stepped aside. But her hand brushed Mason's wrist, just enough for him to feel a tiny chip press into his skin. She whispered without moving her lips, "Don't trust what they say." Mason walked forward slowly, heart pounding, as the door shut behind them. He looked back at her. Her face was blank, too blank. Something wasn't right. The two aliens didn't take him far, just into the alley behind the building. And then they stopped. One of them turned to Mason. "Do you know what's in that house?" Mason said nothing. They didn't wait for an answer. "There's a creature inside," the tall one said. "Older than the building, older than the city. It uses human thoughts to rebuild itself. You've seen it, haven't you?" Mason stayed quiet. The officer stepped closer. "We lost a team to that house 3 years ago," he said. "Your brother was with them." Mason's eyes went wide. He was still alive when they entered. The officer looked toward the building. But something came out wearing his voice. "And Zareen?" Mason asked. "She made a deal," the officer said. "She gave it power. In exchange for safety." They didn't arrest Mason. They let him go with a warning. "If you stay in that house, you'll become part of it. Run while you can." Mason walked back slowly, too many thoughts in his head. Zareen was waiting by the door, her eyes shining in the dark. "You saw them," she said. He nodded. "They didn't take me." "I told you," she said. "You're important to it." That night, Mason stood outside the third door again. He didn't knock, didn't speak. He just placed his hand on the wood, and the door pulsed, warm under his palm. It felt familiar, like a heartbeat he remembered. Zareen walked up behind him. "I think it believes you are him," she whispered. "Then maybe I can get through to it." Mason said. She didn't stop him. She just turned and walked away. The door opened on its own. Inside was darkness, thick and deep. Mason stepped in, heart pounding like a drum. He didn't see walls, or furniture, or light. He saw fog and shapes, and in the center, a man facing away from him. "Eli?" Mason whispered. The figure turned. It was Eli's face, but the eyes were too black, too hollow. The mouth smiled, but it wasn't his smile. "Brother," it said. Mason stepped back. "No, you're not him. I remember everything." The voice said, "Our games, our parents, your fear of lightning." It took a step forward. "I am what's left of him." Mason's hand shook. "I came to find my brother," he said. "Then stay," the thing whispered, "and become like me." The door behind Mason slammed shut. Darkness swallowed the room. Zareen stood outside, waiting, not moving, not speaking. Because once the third door closed, no one ever came back the same. Mason didn't scream when the darkness swallowed him. He couldn't. It felt like the air had turned thick, pressing on his chest, wrapping around his arms like invisible ropes. The figure that wore his brother's face stood perfectly still. The smile never faded. But the eyes, those empty black holes, watched him like a predator. Mason took a step back, but the floor shifted under him. It was no longer made of wood. It was soft, pulsing, almost alive. He heard voices, dozens of them, whispering through the walls, his name. Old memories, pieces of conversations from childhood. It wasn't just copying Eli anymore. It was digging through Mason's own mind. "You are the key," the thing said. Its voice was still gentle, still familiar. "You carry his code, his shape, his scent. I can finish." "Finish what?" Mason asked, voice hoarse. The figure opened its arms, and the room filled with light, blinding, golden, and too loud. Mason dropped to his knees, covering his head. Then silence. When he opened his eyes, he wasn't in the room anymore. He was standing in the middle of a memory, Earth, a long time ago, the backyard of their home. Young Eli was there, holding a toy plane, laughing. Mason was there too, a child, watching his older brother run in circles. But something was wrong. The sky flickered like a broken screen, and the grass under his feet moved like tiny green snakes. He stepped toward Eli, but the boy looked up with those same black eyes. "Stay," he whispered, "and I'll bring him back." The vision shattered like glass. Mason dropped back into the dark room. Sweating and shaking, the creature stepped closer again, its form glitching between Eli's face and something else, something ancient and cracked. "Your thoughts are a doorway," it said. "Let me in, and we become one." "No," Mason whispered. "You're not real." The door behind him didn't open, but he felt something on his neck, a warm spark, like electricity. Zarene's voice whispered through the air. "The chip. Use it." He didn't know how, but instinct took over. He reached into his jacket, touched the spot where she had pressed the chip into his skin. The chip flared, and a burst of light exploded from his chest. The creature screamed no longer. Eli, no longer calm, it twisted into smoke, its arms stretching into the walls, trying to hold on. Mason fell backward through the door, landing hard on the hallway floor. The door slammed shut behind him, this time without help. He gasped for air. His hands trembling, Zarene stood over him, not with fear, but with sorrow. "You saw it," she said. "It wanted your mind." He looked up at her, confused and angry. "You knew this would happen." She nodded slowly. "I didn't know it would choose you," she said. "But I knew it was waiting for someone like him. And since you're his brother..." It saw the same path. Mason sat up. "That thing. It's not just a memory, it's a parasite. It uses grief like fuel," Zarene said. "And I fed it for too long." "You loved him," Mason said. "I still do," she whispered. "But love made me weak." He stood slowly, heart pounding. "Then we end this," Zarene nodded. "I've hidden something," she said. "A weapon. But it only works for someone the creature trusts." She led him to the farthest room in the building. Behind another locked door he hadn't noticed before, inside was a glowing sphere, humming softly. Zarene placed it in his hands. "If you enter again," she said, "and it lets you close enough. Break this." Mason stared at the sphere. "Will it kill it?" Zarene shook her head. "No. It will make it remember what it truly is. And that might be worse." That night, Mason didn't sleep. He stood in front of the third door again, holding the sphere. The door didn't open, but he heard the voice again, softer this time. "Brother, come back, I'm cold." Mason closed his eyes. He wasn't just fighting for answers anymore. He was fighting for his own mind, and maybe for what was left of his brother's soul. Mason stood in front of the third door one last time. The glowing sphere in his hands pulsed like a heartbeat. Behind the door, the voice of his brother waited. Softer now, more fragile, it called to him like a memory he didn't want to lose. But Mason knew what was on the other side wasn't Eli, not truly. It was something that wore grief like a mask and love like a trap. He didn't knock. He just stepped forward, and the door opened before he touched it, as if the house itself had given up pretending. Inside, the room was no longer dark. It was white, endless and bright, like a blank page, and in the center stood Eli, smiling, hands open. "Mason," he said, You came back. Mason's fingers tightened around the sphere. This isn't real. Eli's smile didn't fade. It's more real than anything, he said. I remember everything. Don't you? The room flickered. Suddenly, they were back on Earth, sitting on their childhood porch, then the ship where Eli last sent his message, then the day their parents died. The scenes changed too quickly. Spinning through pain and love like a storm. You can stay here, the voice said. We can live in the memories forever. You don't have to hurt anymore. Mason stepped forward. You're not him, he said. You're just wearing him. The thing blinked, the smile twitching. I was him, it whispered. And you could be too. He held up the sphere, and it began to glow brighter. I came to bring him back, Mason said. Not become him. The light filled the space, breaking the illusions, shattering the fake memories. The thing screamed not loud, but deep, like a crack spreading through the world. The white room twisted, collapsing. Mason saw shapes, dozens of faces, maybe hundreds people it had copied, devoured, forgotten, in the center of it all. A core twisting, black and red, pulsing with stolen thoughts. He hurled the sphere toward it with everything he had. The moment it hit, the room exploded into silence. No light, no sound, no floor beneath him, just a falling sensation. And then he opened his eyes on the hallway floor, gasping. Zerine knelt beside him, her hands on his shoulders. You're back, she said, her voice shaking. He looked at the third door. It was open, but inside was nothing but dust. The air felt clean, still, quiet. It's gone, he whispered. Zerine nodded. You destroyed the echo, she said. You cut its link to the minds it stole. Mason sat up slowly, his body weak. He felt something missing inside him, some grief he'd carried for so long now finally gone, and yet the memory of Eli remained, not twisted, not copied, just real and quiet, like a photo in his heart. What was that thing really? He asked. Zerine stood and looked toward the sky through the window. Something born from sorrow, she said. From the minds of the lost, the broken. It fed on what we refused to let go. Mason stood beside her. So what now? She looked at him, tired but smiling. I was alone for a long time, she said. But not anymore. Outside, the stars were still there, unchanged. But the house felt lighter, no longer haunted by whispers. Zerine returned to her garden, fixing old tools and humming again. And Mason began repairing the building, turning the empty rooms into something new. No more locked doors, no more secrets, only memories. And somewhere in the quiet space between sleep and dreams, he still heard his brother's voice, not calling, not pleading, just laughing like he used to. And this time, it was real.